Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a review of a really fine disc. I mean, it's not new. It's just something that I've been playing around with. It came out in 2018, actually, but it took me a while to get to it. Well, it's piano music by Felix Blumenfeld. Now, I've heard some other things by Blumenfeld. I mean, he was a very interesting artist in his way. He lived from 1863 to 1931. He was really in the middle, smack dab in the middle of the great Russian piano school. That's what he really was a piano pedagogue more than anything else. But he was also a composer and quite a fine conductor. He conducted the Imperial Opera in St. Petersburg and gave the Paris premiere of Boris Godunov in 1908. And he was a student of Rimsky-Korsakov, as was everybody in St. Petersburg, apparently. But, Rimsky was his mentor, and his music sounds, well, what you might expect from somebody of this vintage. It's kind of like Rachmaninoff and Metner and those people. Tchaikovsky, of course, features in it. It's thick and romantic and dense. It's not chromatic, sludgy type stuff, though. His dissonances tend to be more diatonic, I think. I mean, that's just my initial impression hearing this a few times. He was very, very expert at what he did. He didn't have the greatest musical personality. You won't put something on of his, you go, aha, Blumenfeld, like you would, for example, Tchaikovsky or Rachmaninoff, or even maybe Metner if you know him well enough. I mean, it's an open question, right? But he seemed to be a more healthy kind of romantic guy. There's a lot of quasi this and that in his work, but he's not drooping with sadness. I mean, he's not like Busoni, who called everything he wrote an elegy, or Metner with his forgotten this or unknown that, or what those romantic people did. Everything was mysterious and living on the edge of oblivion. I don't hear a lot of oblivion in his music. What I hear is like some really brilliant piano music that's fun to listen to. And this particular disc, which is extremely well played by Karl-Andreas Kolly on MD&G, the MD&G label, contains, he wrote a whole bunch of preludes, which have been recorded, by the way. I think they're on Piano Classics. We might talk about those too. Those are good pieces. The Prelude Opus 17, number 10. Then his Nocturne-Fantasie. He liked fantasy. He does have fantasy, but he doesn't have amnesiac fantasy. It's not forgotten fantasy or elegiac fantasy or dead fantasy or that kind of stuff. So the Nocturne-Fantasie Opus 20, which is a big work. I mean, it's almost 10 minutes. The Variations caracteristiques Opus 8, characteristic variations, a big sucker. Well, I mean, not, Diabelli-like, but it's 16 minutes. It's plenty of variations, and they are characteristic. They're full of character and contrast and fun to listen to. Then we have A Night at Magarach, Opus 6, number 1, and his Etude Opus 54, which is less than 2 minutes of etudosity. And then one of his real masterpieces, the Sonata-Fantasie Opus 46. Now, this is a largish work, 20 some odd minutes, and in 3 movements, and it's marvelous. It's really a fine work. It's powerful and turbulent and exciting, and it's in clear cyclical form. It's pretty easy to follow. The opening and the first and third movements are kind of the same, and it rises to a big impetuous climax. It's sort of abruptly cut off, but satisfyingly so. It's really a fine work. I mean, it's a real discovery. If you're looking for sort of large-scale piano pieces that you don't know that you really ought to, or you'll enjoy discovering, or sinking your fingers or your ears into, then the Sonata-Fantasie Opus 46 by Blumenfeld is really quite the piece. And then the program ends with 3 preludes, back again from the Opus 17 set. I think there are 24 of them in Opus 17. There's a big pile of them. Numbers 1, 20, and 19 in that order. And some of these preludes are pretty substantial. They're not all just, 30-second things. So the sonics here are quite splendid, and the music is just so worth discovering. If you're a piano maven, you probably already know all about Blumenfeld, far more than I do, I'm sure. But if you're not, I mean, he has been performed. He's been undergoing something of a renaissance, and he shows up on programs of Russian things, like Rachmaninoff and Mettner and programs of that sort. He was the uncle of Heinrich Neuhaus, who was the teacher of Richter and zillions of other people. He was a cousin to Szymanowski. I mean, he was really in the middle of things. He really was. And you can kind of tell. I mean, this music has this confidence. It may not have, the ultimate in individuality, but it is very, very much of its time and place and school and tradition. And the guy knows what he's doing. So you'll find it, I think, quite rewarding. Anyway, Kolly, Karl-Andreas Kolly, plays it really well. As I said, MD&G has recorded it marvelously. And boy, great fun. Absolutely great fun. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and take care.